Gonna unmute my guest and do an introduction here. So again, not about 6 or 7 months ago, I think, and maybe my guest tonight can correct me. I was reached out to on my channel, and I started a relationship, and so I'm really excited to have Eric Levy here from Tucson, Arizona. He's going to be on with me tonight. He has a Career Insight podcast happening on YouTube. We're going to get a chance to see a clip tonight. We're going to get a chance to get a tour of his studio as long as everything goes right. It should be, we should have audio, and we should be good to go tonight. So you guys will have to let me know if the audio is good in the chat when I bring our guest on. So welcome with me tonight, Eric Levy from Tucson, Arizona. Welcome, Eric. I'm going to make a little adjustment to SuperSource here for your box, and we'll bring that down just a touch and increase the size. I had to guess what this is going to look like. And okay, say something now.
It's finally starting to cool off around here a little bit, but cooling off means 100, not 112.
What's that? How hot is it?
Cooling off here around this time of the year means 100 degrees, not 112 degrees.
Yeah, I know. We actually will get up to about 112 here in the Tri-Cities, and it can be crazy. So I know what Arizona weather is like, but not like summer Arizona weather. I hear it's brutal.
Oh yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Well, so give us a little background about yourself, Eric, and maybe what you're doing right now, and then we'll go on to talk a little bit more about what's happening in your studio.
Well, I've been an attorney for right around 16 years, and I still am. I'm still licensed, but kind of wanted to get out of that traditional 8 to 5, so decided to try to go down the YouTube podcast route because it seemed like a lot of people were ending up making a living that way. So I'm giving it my shot.
So building a channel. So your podcast, what's it about? I know it's called Career Insights, but tell me a little bit of background, what led you to go that direction? Because obviously it's a pretty specific direction, and I've watched some of your videos already. So talk about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I've been an attorney for so long, but how I became an attorney was literally overnight. I made a decision to do that because the career path that I was following prior to that didn't work out. And I was talking to an attorney that I knew, and she was like, well, why don't you go to law school? And I ended up doing that. Literally, it was either 24 or 48 hours. I decided to make that career choice. But the one thing that I didn't do was I didn't do a lot of research on becoming an attorney and what it would be like to be an attorney and things like that. So that was a big inspiration for the podcast was, there's people that are, young folks that are in high school or college. They really should be doing a lot of research on any career fields that they're interested in. And then you might have somebody like me, where maybe I want to make a career change into something else. I would still need to be doing some research to find out, what's that job market look like, things like that. So that was a really big inspiration for the podcast was, somebody that's looking to get into a certain career field. This might be the first step for them in their research on, hey, what is it like to be that? Because a lot of times we think that we're going to get into something because it sounds cool, right? We pursue that. And we end up getting there and to find out that, well, maybe it wasn't so cool. You know what I mean? And that'd be a really big mistake if you had taken out a lot of, student loan debt a lot of the time and things like that. So what I'm hoping for is this will be the start for whoever's looking to either enter a career field or change their career field, and to kind of start to get an idea of whether they want to actually do this.
Yeah, it's a big decision, especially when I was coming out of school. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. So and there was no career fairs offered when I was in high school. So now I hear that they do that. There's colleges that you can visit and talk to people. But so how do you think the podcast will actually help people know more about career paths? Talk a little bit about what happens in the podcast and how that would help anybody that would listen.
So let's say, for instance, for being an attorney, you know what I mean? It's like, well, what's required? Like, well, a 4-year degree Then you have to go to law school, and that could be either 4 years full time or 3 years full time, 4 years part time. What type of debt are you looking? You know, how much is it going to cost you?
Yeah.
What does a day look like? How much time and effort? What does the job market look like afterwards? Like, depending on whether you go government sector or private sector.
Right.
So a lot of useful information that would be like a starting point. Like, okay, well, this school costs that much. Well, what if you're in state versus out of state? Because that's a big difference. You
Right.
know what I mean? So different tuition rates depending on where you're living, whether it's a public school or a private school. So there's all these different things that people that have been there will know that can convey that to people that aren't, you know, that don't have any experience in that area.
Yeah. So, like, for instance, like attorneys, I know my future daughter-in-law is an attorney. She had to take the bar in both California, and then there was a bar that she had to take that was here in the Northwest that you could do like 3 states. So one of the things they have to do is take the bar if they want to be an attorney, and that's per state normally, isn't it?
It is, yeah. There are some states now, they have what's called reciprocity. So if you're licensed in one state, other states may honor that bar license, but you might still have to do their like their background investigation and their ethics exam for that state.
Right.
But a lot of the states now do have reciprocity with one another, which is really helpful because then you wouldn't have to take the bar, which is a 2-day exam in most places all day, like 8 hours a day. And it's very comprehensive. It takes a lot of work to study for that. So
Right.
the reciprocity rule is a very big deal.
So now, how many years of college did you go to become an attorney? Was it was 4 years?
Yeah, so 4 years for undergraduate degree and then 3 years full time, so 7 total.
So is that your day gig now?
Part of it is, yeah. I also coach CrossFit too, so I'm a CrossFit coach level 1.
Yeah, you look like you're in shape. Maybe I need some CrossFit. So when you came up with this idea, how long ago was this podcast idea? How long has this been brewing?
Oof. At this point, almost 2 years, about 1.5 years to 2 years, somewhere between that time frame.
So when did you decide that this was going to happen and be a video podcast and you were going to take over a part of your house and turn it into a studio? So tell us a little bit about that whole process and thought process.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that like you always are pondering something.
Right.
You know, what's that one thing that you're thinking about that you really want to do? And the only way you're going to find out is actually doing it. And, you know, I had talked about it in my mind and with friends for, you know, quite some time. And, you know, the realization just really comes down to like, if you don't do anything, it's never going to happen and you'll never know.
Right.
Versus if you take that leap, you'll find out. You know what I mean? So I'm on that path right now where it's like, well, we're going to find out. I don't know where this is going to lead. I have big hopes for it. But, you know, I'm giving it everything that I can, you know,
Right.
and yeah, we'll see where it goes.
So I got a chance to join you in a journey. How long ago was that? I can't even remember.
I think it was about 6, 7, 8 months ago. It's been a little while.
And how far were you, and how did you find out about this guy here? And what has the experience?
You know, so
what has the experience been like? Brutal honesty. What is the experience like? Did I help you? Was I going too fast?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it started off like I had done a ton of research up front. You know, I had watched I don't even know how many YouTube videos on my cameras and switching and everything that you would think that you would need: microphones, boom arms, you know, the Rodecaster, the Atem, a new laptop. And I got to a point where once I had accumulated all this equipment, I was like, well, I don't even know what to do with this. You know, so then I'm going back on YouTube, like, how do you hook up an ATEM to this? And then I came across one of your videos, and the thumbnail was really good because it really laid out. I was like, oh, this is what I need right here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so good job on the thumbnail.
That was the ATEM. I was thinking, what would attract me? That was probably the only good thumbnail I've done, in my opinion, is that Atem Mini Pro getting started.
I think you had the diagram too, so it was like Atem to you know, SEETEC monitor or something like that.
Oh yeah, okay. And, so I know which video it is now. Yeah.
That you know, that I started watching that, but even you can watch, you know, your videos are great, but it doesn't really matter. You're always going to get to a point where, because you don't have the experience, you need somebody there to kind of like, oh, well, this is next now.
Right.
So then I remember reaching out to you, and we had a conversation, and man, it was so helpful. Like I mean, I should have hired you way, way long ago because
Yeah.
I would be so much further already. You know what I mean? But so
Yeah, and I don't really,
I
I hadn't promoted a lot. It was just one of those things where I thought, if someone finds me and they reach out and take advantage of the 1 hour Zoom, if I could answer
yeah,
their question, literally, I didn't even bring up that I had a consulting program. I remember one guy going, "So this is it? Is there a way to get another hour?" And I go, "Are you asking me to continue
yeah,
helping?" He says, "Yeah, I didn't. I was
yeah,
hoping you would." So again,
yeah.
so what was the value? And talk a little bit about what I helped with, and how much how much did I help you, and how much did you really still have to continue doing on your own? Because I really believe it's a high percentage you still have to be willing to do on your own.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, your assistance is absolutely, very valuable. It's just like you're saying, you can have a coach there telling you what to do, and then you start doing it. But there's going to come a point where things are going to like be still foreign,
Right,
and so having that coach yourself there to like help out, like whether it was through a text or a phone call or the next meeting that we did,
right,
I mean, you can't even really put a price on that because otherwise you're just spending all of this time hoping that you're going to find the information in a YouTube video or an
right,
article versus we
right.
can just have a conversation and solve that issue in 5 minutes.
Right. And one of the things
So
too is then I can point you in the right direction because I've watched so many videos and there's people that have
mhm,
influenced me. A lot of times I'll just say, "Hey, we could spend 3 hours trying to cover DaVinci Resolve, which I don't edit with on a regular basis, or you could watch this person or watch this video." But once you realize that's the solution, right, for you, because
yeah,
it's free and you decide to go that direction,
yeah,
then
yeah,
you have to do kind of the hard work. And that's what I was talking about because I'm really not looking to have people jump on my back and carry them to the finish line. What I was really trying to do is come alongside, assist, and then hand you the tools, and eventually, hopefully, have you just run on your own and then reach out occasionally. And I have a lot of clients now that just text me. We're not in a consulting relationship anymore. They'll just text me a question, and then occasionally they'll feel bad and they'll go, "Hey, Keith, I want to get a couple hours." And really, it's the idea of the synergy and having the relationship. And from my perspective, the chance for me to meet you and your wife, which we'll talk about what she's doing a little bit later, is
yeah,
invaluable because I'd have never met you. I'd have never had a chance to
yeah,
watch your podcast, be a part of the journey. And now I feel
sure.
like 5 or 6 years from now, you and I will be exchanging ideas of how to,
Oh,
how
for
to
real.
build
Yeah.
our channels because you can tell you've done a lot. So talk about the studio. Where is it in the house? Are you in it right now? What are some of the things you had to consider to start building a studio or a home studio to be able to do what you're doing?
Yeah. So I live in a 3 bedroom house, and, this is one of the spare rooms. And I was questioning because it's not like a huge room. I think it's 12 by 10. It's like a standard room, right?
Right,
And you look at other podcasts and like what they do, and you can tell that the space is pretty big.
right,
So you're a little bit hesitant, like, can I really do this in this space? So then you're watching videos on like what people are doing in like small spaces because you can find those videos all day long.
right,
But then it was like, okay, well, if we do this, this room is going to be that. That's it. I mean, you're not going to be able to do anything else in here other than podcasting, and that's really what it has become. It's like it is a studio. And it wasn't really a hard choice. It just feels awkward because you haven't done it really before. But you just like anything else, when you haven't done it, when you do it, you start to get used to it. And now it just feels normal that that's what this room is. A lot of like researching, a lot of thought going into because it's a smaller room, like
right.
how are we gonna do the walls, like things like that, lighting, because like for instance, like when you have like your main key light, that light is a pretty big light,
Yeah,
and they have these stands called C stands, and they're really big and they're pretty heavy, and you almost need a sandbag to hold that thing down. And it was
right,
like we tried it one time, and I was like, this is not going to work, and I can't have 3 cameras with 3 stands because there would just be stands and cables everywhere.
right,
So then it was like, well, what can I get for wall or ceiling mount? Because they make a wall or ceiling mount for almost
right,
everything,
right.
and that was huge. cable management was another big thing for like a smaller studio. I mean, any studio, but especially like a smaller one, you know, because I want to be able to vacuum the floor and things like that. So I feel like I've optimized this the best that I could, after a lot of like thought and research and just kind of hunting around for that perfect piece of like furniture, or it's like where I have like where I have the Rodecaster, the Atem, my laptop, and the SEETEC monitor. I found this perfect little table with wheels on it that I can disconnect everything, and I have hooks underneath my podcast table that I can loop all the cables to, and I can wheel that out. That way, when I vacuum, there's literally almost no cords in
It's awesome.
here.
And
Everything's
you're not in
and
there
I'll show
alone.
everybody that when we get to that.
Yeah,
point.
you're actually you're bringing guests for everybody tonight to understand. You're actually bringing guests inside your studio and doing real like interviews, right?
Everything's been in person here in the studio so far.
Yeah. So for my viewers are really interested in the tech, what are like? So take us through. So the cameras that you're using right now, how many cameras do you have?
I've got 3 Lumix. They're Panasonic Lumix G85 cameras.
Okay, and you're using all 3 of those, so you have 3 different shot angles, which we'll see in the clip tonight.
Yep. Yeah, and that was a big deal. I wanted to have like the multi-camera option, but I had also watched and read that like the 3-camera editing was very time consuming. So then I started researching. I'm like, well, how can I cut down on that time? And then I came across like the video switchers, the Atem series by Blackmagic Design. And the more I got into that, I was like, okay, I have to go this route. I don't know which one yet, but I need to go this route, because then I knew that I could be, or not me, but somebody could be switching as I was recording, which makes the editing like it cuts it. I mean, I don't have to edit any camera stuff.
Yeah,
it's already.
I'll record. Sometimes I have ISO, so I can record all the different camera angles. I'm only using one right now, but I rarely want to go into that file and start editing. I like to just do my best job I can live. That's why I like live. I feel like it's interactive with the people that are there. It's when I'm podcasting or when I do my wife's podcast, we're not live, but I do all of the camera switching, and we pretty well live with whatever I live. Normally it's one shot, but occasionally I'll do some behind the scenes shots. But you're doing 3 angles. So talk about real quickly those 3 angles, and then we'll talk about how do you see yourself? What are you using for a confidence monitor? What are you using for microphones as well? So what angles, what shots are you using right now?
So the 3 angles are the typical, regular podcast. Like we're sitting across from each other on a table. So the camera 1 is both of us in one shot.
Okay, wide shot.
Looking from the side. And then there's another camera across from me at an angle that's going to get me and only me. And then there's another camera that's across from the guest that will only be the guest. So it's basically like a shot of me, a shot of the guest, and then a shot of both of us from the middle.
And so when you record, someone's doing the switching for you?
Yes, my wife.
Okay, cool. It's nice to have someone else in the studio. I'm a one-man band, except for when Zoe, my dog, comes in, and all she will do is add more noise to the live streams of the podcast.
I had heard that like people, like if they do it on their own, they can have like a foot pad or something like that. But I never needed to go that. And thankfully my wife is willing to do this for me, because it's very helpful to have the switching done. So anybody that's going to be doing a multi-camera podcast, an Atem of some kind is almost a must.
Yeah.
Like it will cut down on your editing time immensely.
So tell them which one you have. So you have an Atem.
I have the Atem Mini Pro ISO.
Okay, so you can record all 4 inputs. So you have everything, and if you want to change the edit at the end, you can open up the DaVinci Resolve XML file and then change that. A lot of people don't. I think most of the people that would normally attend tonight's live stream will know that, but people listening later, is that's a huge thing. The fact that when you get an ISO, you go to that next level of having that XML file that you can actually then go change some edits.
And the editing for me has been pretty smooth, because basically when I'm done with a podcast, I just pull it up in DaVinci Resolve, and then I'm watching the whole thing to make sure there's no glaring problem that I need to fix.
Right.
But I'm also putting in zoom effects and a couple other things. I'm taking notes as I'm going through of highlight parts of the podcast. That way I can make an intro.
Right.
Because every podcast that I do has a minute intro of like highlight parts
Right.
that has like music in the background. And then I've also put the Zoom effects in. So literally, like if I have an hour and a half podcast, I can edit that like 2.5 to 3 hours.
Wow.
And then I'll make my intro. That might take like another hour. I put it on the front of the podcast. I render it, and then it's pretty much done. So the editing, and this is with me just starting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Once I get into like a good workflow, I think I could be able to like do my short form, my shorts, and everything for a podcast within probably 4 to 5 hours per podcast.
Awesome.
That's my goal.
So audio right now you're using, I heard you say Rodecaster. Are you using the very original or the 2 or
It's the Pro II.
Okay. And then what microphones are you using?
I've got the Rode PodMics.
Okay. And how do you like the sound of those?
Oh, good. Now that we've got it dialed in a little bit better, you know what I mean? Because distance was an issue at first.
Right.
Starting to have like a little bit of like a tinny sound, and then I was looking up some stuff, and we the last one we just did, we had them like within that 3 to 6 inch range, and that really helped a lot.
Yeah, it's very it's like this microphone. You need to be on it. I'm away from it right now because my mic's a bit hotter than your mic, so I'm trying to balance our audio. So you have a Rodecaster Pro. You have 3 cameras. You have a Atem Mini ISO, Mini Pro ISO, and then you have a laptop you're doing editing, or PC you do your editing on.
I bought a brand new laptop because I wanted it to have like I wanted it to have a really good video card. I wanted it to be a quad core processor because DaVinci Resolve requires, I mean, you don't have to, but the higher end PC that you have, the smoother it runs, and it runs really well. I've got like a laptop cooler that goes under it, but I also have the SEETEC monitor, so I can see, like whoever's doing the switching can see everything that's going on during the podcast, which is very helpful.
So you're using it, so you feed all the cameras into the SEETEC and then into the Atem.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you also have multi-view if you want it coming out of the Atem Mini Pro ISO, because it's got one HDMI out. So the other thing, so for lights, then you talked about a big softbox. So now you have things mounted on the ceiling. Is that how you have your lights?
I have the main key light on the ceiling. I just got some more panel lights that are on stands, but I need to make a bar to go across the room that I'm going to have these, and I'm going to have these as hair lights.
Okay.
I've been using some smaller like aperture lights, but they're not really like great for hair lights. I need more power, like more like lumens or something like that. So I've got these panel lights. I'm actually using one right now for this.
Cool.
But once I get that bar going across the room, then I'll be able to have like, because you can almost kind of see my key light is acting like a hair light right now.
Yeah.
And then I have the panel light like literally right here that's kind of like shining on my face. So this is how I would like it to look in the podcast, but I have to get it all set up.
Looks really good. I'm glad we got a chance. So for those that are listening, we were able to do a little test yesterday at 3:30 in the afternoon, just so I would feel semi-comfortable that I was going to be able to get audio in tonight's live stream. And okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask about is you said you have the SEETEC. Is that the only, I noticed in one of your podcasts, you guys were showing some slides. You know, the podcast we're going to see a clip of tonight, we'll actually see slides inside the podcast itself, but you guys were looking at them. So you have a monitor somewhere in the room that you can look at slides and stuff at?
I do. So I have like a separate workstation that's not like podcast related, but I have an HDMI. It's the 4th HDMI out from the Atem.
Right.
That I run to, because I have 2 screens on my other computer setup, and I just run that HDMI to that, and it's literally right in the middle of both people, so we can both look at that. Okay. And then we do the picture-in-picture. Like that's one of the things that we worked on. Was we set up picture-in-picture on the actual podcast screen, so that when we're talking, whoever's watching can see what we're looking at. So it works out really well.
Cool. Well, so the other thing I wanted to ask you before we go to this clip, this is going to be the clip. I think I told you haven't seen it yet, but you've seen, obviously you've seen the whole podcast. Yeah. It's your first one. And I want you to kind of intro the relationship that you have with your longtime friend and compadre. Yes. But let me ask this before we move on. What other hurdles did you experience? I mean, obviously you have the technology, the equipment that you're using, lights, setting up the studio, building doing the backgrounds, and everybody's going to see the backgrounds. And you have 2 right now. You're in front of your wife's black background, and they're going to see your wood panel background when they see the podcast. What were some of the big hurdles that really that you were able to get over along the way of building a home studio and getting ready to start recording? Is there anything that jumps out to you that were huge hurdles?
I think that I think the way that we have the room set up, like that was a big hurdle first, because it was like I wanted the wood paneling look, but I was like, well, how am I going to do this? Am I going to do this like with plywood? And
Yeah,
then am I going to put like pallet wood on the side of that? Because now that's going to be really heavy.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But we ended up finding, and I'll be able to show it to you because I can flip the boards around pretty quick.
cool.
We ended up getting this 8x8 sheets of this like styrofoam from it's insulation that you can get from Home Depot or Lowe's.
Okay,
Pretty inexpensive. I want to say it was like $30 a sheet or something like that, or maybe it was 40.
right,
But it's super light, and we made one side the way that my wife wants it, and then the other side is the kind of like wood,
right,
and it's actually drop cloth, like a backdrop from Amazon. It was like, I don't know, it was like $80 or something like that. We cut it, glued it on, and then on the other side, we have some velvet that looks really good for what my wife wants to do. That was, so trying to figure out how you're going to like manage a big space. But the other thing was just the amount of time that it takes to do all the research. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
you want to make sure you're getting the right equipment. And the example that I would use is the cameras that I have right now. I almost didn't order them because I had already chosen another specific camera. I think it was a Canon, and I had decided to watch one more video before I ordered them. Thank God I did, because in that video, this was something that I wasn't aware of, was that most of the DSLR cameras that are being used to record have 30-minute time limits to their recording.
right,
And that's because of some standard. I cannot remember what it is, but there are certain cameras that got around that standard.
right,
And the reason is because video cameras are cameras that record for longer than 30 minutes. So to
right.
get around that 30-minute time thing, there's some kind of regulation. But when I came across that, I was like, wow. And then I started watching videos on people that had those cameras and how much of a pain it was to try to edit, because you can record hours on that camera, but every 30 minutes it's going to stop, and then you're going to
Right.
have to restart it.
Right.
So if you're wanting to get into video podcasting, you have to make sure that whatever device you're going to use, if you're using a DSLR camera, that it does not have the 30-minute record limit. That's huge.
Yeah. So I
And
have a Canon 5D Mark III, and it times out. So there's cameras that time out, and
yeah,
then there's cameras like my EOS R and my Canon 5D Mark IV. If I have a dummy battery in them and I'm only using the HDMI cable out and I'm not pushing record, they have
yeah.
the same time limit. So I totally understand. So besides that camera issue, what is there anything else that you would say that anybody's thinking about doing a podcast? What about like you're doing a video and audio podcast? What about getting YouTube set up and getting audio podcast ready for release? What's that
So
been like?
it wasn't setting up the YouTube channel and stuff like that wasn't as bad as I thought. The hard thing for me right now is trying to find like my workflow in, because I have the long form, I have the full like podcast
Right.
on YouTube right now, but I also want to make shorter versions of about like 10 to 15 minutes. But then I also want to make shorts, the actual vertical videos
Right.
that are anywhere from 5 seconds to like a minute long. And so because it's a vertical format video, it's different in DaVinci Resolve. So right now I'm trying to figure out like how to actually do that.
Right.
Because when you do the vertical format, it like adjusts like the zoom automatically. So I need to figure out how to like adjust that. I haven't really gotten to that yet. And I'm just happy that I'm actually like have the episodes out and they're
Right.
there for people to watch and things like that. But that's, I guess, just getting into like a rhythm with my workflow, like actually editing the podcasts right now, just the full thing, putting in zoom effects, taking notes on the highlights, and then making the intros.
Right.
I feel really good about that. It's kind of like the extra things that I need to do to kind of generate more views for the longer form stuff.
Yeah. Well, I
that,
think watching like Tucker Carlson and some people that are doing home studio type podcasts now, and then he makes shorts, he's using the camera directly on the guest and the camera directly on them. And he's editing those separate, because typically you can frame it so that a portrait like we're doing right now works with just the guest camera or your camera. The wide shot doesn't work. So what I've noticed, just maybe to help you get going, is that they're taking that ISO file and the other ISO file,
Okay.
they're taking their clips, and then they want to get you. They're even using more reaction. Like if there's a real dialogue and not just a
Yeah.
monologue going on, they're cutting back and forth, and so that's a new build in DaVinci Resolve using just your 2 shots. Without an ISO or recording in the camera, you wouldn't be able to do that. But the good news is you have all 3 ISO files that you can do that. And then you can cut to a wide shot if you want of just you
Yeah.
and him, but it's the same thing. You're going to have to crop this side or that side. And I've done videos for clients before where I had to take their widescreen video, bring it
Uh-huh.
into a Premiere Pro, and then track it. I literally
Well,
had,
see, this is like a perfect example for anybody that's watching right now. Is that like I had totally spaced that I have all 3 cameras on separate files.
yeah.
So you saying that, it's like, oh, duh. Like, why don't I? Yeah, I could just go and get that one camera.
Yeah, so you get
So
those, though, in your notes, you go, that is a short, that statement there, and then you could
yeah.
just pull that out of the ISO
Mhm.
files. That, in my opinion, for anybody that wants to do a podcast that's listening tonight, and yes, Tony, we are going to give you a tour of the studio. So
Yeah.
he asked me a while ago. So there is a studio tour coming. There's a clip coming. We're going to spend pretty much the whole night till about quarter after talking about Eric's stuff. We may be on a while after he's gone, and we're going to really talk about podcasting tonight. So stay with us. We have a clip coming up just as a commercial, and we also have Eric's going to take us through a studio, and so we'll try to change the format and just have me in the side in the big picture as he picks up his phone. Now you're streaming. I mean, you're in the Zoom right now on your phone, so you're going to be able to go mobile.
Oh yeah, I'll show everything. Yep, you'll get to see everything. I'll show everything I have and what I thought about it.
Yeah.
If anybody's got any questions and they want to send it to you in the chat, I'd be more than welcome.
Yeah, I'm going to be monitoring the chat, firing out the questions to you as you give us a tour. So that's going to be really cool. I think Ernesto popped in. We'll catch up on the chat here in a minute. So, okay, so I really do want to get to this clip, and I have a clip of your podcast. This is your very first podcast. You asked me a question out of the blue, and I asked you, when is your first podcast? And you go, I'm getting ready to release it right now. And I said, please send me a clip. So for me to see the end result, even to see your studio, I was jacked. I mean, I thought your studio for someone that's never done it before, has never built a studio before, I was like going, dude, that's pretty nice looking. And I clipped a picture and sent it to you and said, wow, I was really impressed. And then you asked me if I had any critiques, and I finally, gave you a couple of critiques, mainly about backlighting for separating you from the darker set. But so this clip, which is about 5 minutes, it really gets into a special moment that happened over when I don't know if you both guys are serving in the military overseas, but there was, just him. There was a big event that he talks about. That's the clip. There's a picture of him younger that we're going to start the clip at. So tell me a little bit about this first guest, why you had him on, and a little bit about your history, and then we'll roll the clip, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
So Sean, I went to law school. We were in the same class, and I think he's the only one that I really stay in contact with, and that was 17 years ago, right? So we've stayed in contact that whole time, and he lived in California, and he was moving to Texas, and I was like, man, you got to stop by. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna come by. So he was driving through, and I told him, I was like, hey, we have to do a podcast. This is like the only chance that you're gonna be here in person. And so it was like, it kind of forced it. You know what I mean? I didn't feel like I was ready to do it.
Wow.
But we did it. And at the end of it, I was like, man, that was actually really good. Like I felt really good about it.
Yeah.
And so then it's been every week after that. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm glad that he came through, because that was kind of the thing that kind of tipped it over the edge. I was like, all right, we're going now.
Yeah. And I think conversational podcasts like that are really easy to get going on, because especially if you know the person. So I think it was an A+ start, because you guys had history, you had common ground with your careers. And so you might share a little bit about that later. But so this podcast was about what, hour and a half long, or do you remember how long?
Yeah, just about an hour and a half. Yeah. And it went so fast. Like I couldn't believe we had been there for an hour and a half. It was really good.
Pretty cool. So I should have a clip ready here. I'm just trying to get back into my macros here and see where that clip is at. And so we'll have to both be quiet, because the video is going to be playing and they'll hear us You can laugh if you want to, if there's something, but let's see, where is this? Oh, roll career clip. Here we go.
OTS for the JAG Corps, just doing some, looking like a military person, doing some ropes courses and some battle stuff.
Were you scared?
Yeah, I was terrified. And that rope was like on my groin. It didn't feel good. It didn't feel good.
Look at that young man.
Yeah, I'm that young back. So this was me as a first lieutenant right when I entered the Air Force. Big smiles, no facial hair, a lot thinner. One little ribbon on my jacket.
What is that ribbon?
That's the National Defense Service Medal that you get for joining the military during a time of war.
Yeah.
So this was one of our JAG school trips that we had. We visited Washington D.C. for a week, and we went to the Air Force Memorial. And so this is
that's cool.
This is a group of my JAG classmates and myself standing in front of the Air Force Memorial, which is right outside of Joint Base Andrews in Maryland.
Yeah, I was actually born there.
Really?
Yeah, I was born in Andrews.
No kidding.
Yeah, I've been there since.
On the installation.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh.
Side note, I just
learned so much about it tonight. This is a picture of some of the JAGs and paralegals that we worked with when I was deployed to Afghanistan.
You're the bottom elbow on your knee trying to look like a stud or whatever.
I'm wearing a pistol. I got my 9 on my chest.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm bottom right. And that's with some of our hardware behind us. That we got to ride on while we were in the desert.
This was where?
Bagram, Afghanistan.
Okay, so is there you're in like a little base?
Yeah, I was on. So Bagram was the main one of the major installations. We had a very large airfield, so it was a very busy base, a very big base in Afghanistan. And this is right outside the detention facility that I worked at. Mortars, rockets,
everything.
Yeah, we would have them come in all the time, and you shelter in place, bunker down. I was actually there when Bin Laden was killed.
Wow!
And I was in Afghanistan, and we had heard through military channels that before the president had announced it, we had heard through military channels that they suspected that he was killed.
Wow.
And it was like 1 a.m, because often the times when I was deployed, we were working 8 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. And it was like 1 a.m. There was a bunch of us that were still in the facility, and we were finishing up, and we heard that Bin Laden was killed. And so one of my buddies there had a box of cigars. And so we all went outside the detention facility and just had a celebratory cigar. And there was 30 of us out there, and we were just so happy. And then about 30 minutes after we get outside, we just got bombarded. It was 30 minutes after Obama made the announcement. We got rocketed. We got lit up. Luckily the Taliban, they don't have very good aim, and they just kind of shoot stuff wherever.
Yeah.
But we got rocketed pretty hard. We were bunkering down, and after that, a lot of our aircraft took off, and just absolutely, we saw them take off, and we just saw American firepower blast the crap out of this mountain.
Wow.
Because they had tracked where these rockets were coming, and it's just lit up the sky, and we're all standing there and chill. We're America, it was just one of those moments.
Yeah.
You just want to hear the national anthem play. It was intense. And then after that was done, complete silence.
Wow.
Didn't even, and then we just hung out for another 2 hours. We didn't go to bed till 4 a.m.
That'd be surreal.
We were just, it was intense, but it was a super proud moment. It was awesome.
I wish I could have been there with you.
Yeah, it was one of the best moments of my deployment.
Wow.
By far. Minus getting rocketed.
Yeah.
Let's go back to what happened here. Let's go back to Eric and I. So that you couldn't hear that at all, could you?
I could not. No.
Oh man. So basically ends
okay.
with the fact that the airplanes flew over and started blasting the guys on the mountain, and he said that was one
I
of the
remember.
best moments of his overseas experience. He says that was the highlight. I'm going to fix your super source here as we talk here. So, so what was your biggest takeaway before we look at your studio? What was your biggest takeaway in that first experience? And talk a little bit about being the interviewer with a friend, and what did you learn by doing that first interview as far as being a podcaster?
You know, the first interview, the big takeaway was that it wasn't anywhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was like, man, that went really well. I felt really good about it, you know, and even he was like, dude, that was awesome.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And my wife, same thing, you know, and they weren't just saying it, you know, they're like, wow, that was really good. So
Right.
I felt really good about that. And it just kind of was like, okay, like we got to go, you know, like we're going to do more and we're going to do more. I think my experience as an attorney has helped me a lot because I've been questioning people my entire career because I was a litigator. So, you know, like
Right.
hearings and trials and stuff like
Right.
that, like that helped me a lot. But you know what I mean? It's really you're just having a conversation. So, you know,
Yeah.
if there's that hesitance because of, you know, that anxiety or that nervousness, it's really you're just talking to anybody like you would anywhere else.
Right.
It does feel a little weird that it's going to be on YouTube, but I thought that was going to be an issue, but it's not.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of like what I've done. You know, just it's kind of like what you were saying earlier. It's the first time I've done this, and I really put a lot of work into trying to make it as professional and as good as possible right out of the gate. And I'm happy with the product. Are there going to be things that are going to be improved? Absolutely, because it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But I feel for where I'm at and my experience, I feel like I did the best that I could. And you know, there's going to be little improvements along the way, like there already are, like a couple little lighting things that I've done and getting these panel lights and you know little things like that. So yeah, I just you know don't be afraid. You know, if like you want to do it, you have to go for it. But I will say, hire somebody like Keith, please, because it will save you so much time and heartache to have somebody there by your side coaching you on all the little things that you're just not going to know because you've never done it before.
Yeah. Next week, I'll share a little bit about a client that I just picked up, and she had bought hundreds upon hundreds of dollars of equipment. It's all in boxes at her house. She lives right around the corner from me. Literally,
Yeah.
I can jump in my car, pull out of my driveway, and be at her house in 3 minutes. But she was so completely overwhelmed. She bought a series that tells her how to present herself, what kind of microphone to use. There was a whole list of things, but there was no hands-on. So when she got to the end of the video series, she's like going, what do I do with all this stuff? So that was in May, and she hadn't even unboxed anything. She even had a computer, a Dell computer in a box that I had her take back to Best Buy and replace it with something faster. So, how much time do you think you saved by just having a little bit of hands-on help in getting the podcast up and running?
Easily months. I mean, probably five months at a minimum. You know what I mean? Like, because it was the same thing for me. I was like, okay, I have everything. I think I've got it hooked up right. But then I'm like, I don't even know what to do with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's very overwhelming.
Yeah. Practice makes perfect, but obviously until you actually dive into the deep end, which is live on YouTube, or wade in and swim to the deep end, which is like podcasting, you still have to fight through DaVinci Resolve. You still have to deal with lighting. You still got to get the colors, the balance between the cameras. And that's been fascinating, Eric. And in reality, you know, I have a bunch of different clients. I won't insult anybody tonight, but the interesting thing about you and your wife, and we're going to segue into what her podcast is, then we're going to do the tour. You would take little bites and you go, okay, so I want to try this. I want to do this. I want to get my hands on. And that was refreshing for me. I was wondering, like, are we ever going to get through, you know, the training, because you always wanted to hands on, but I think that's why your podcast is up and running now, because you kept committing yourself to learning how to do it at your pace, and not at my pace, but at your pace. And so talk just a little bit about that. And the wife's got a podcast. What's that going to be called? And when is that going to launch? And who's producing your wife's podcast?
So it's like what you said earlier, like you can only do so much, and then it's on the person that you're helping to actually take action and then try. And you have to make the attempts, and it is intimidating, but the more you do it, just like anything, this is not anything different than whether you wanted to go work out or learn how to fix your car, or I need to repaint my room or something like that.
Right.
And you've never done it before, like you have to start doing it. You have to try things, and that's the only way to really figure it out.
Right.
And that was really helpful. We would talk, and then I would get like an idea of what I needed to do, and then I would go try that. We would go record like little clips, like little 5-minute clips, and like try to figure out, oh, well, this is what I need to do for this, and even when we're doing the podcast now, every single one, I'm learning something.
Yeah.
Like the last one that we did, we kind of got to an awkward point in the podcast where the guest was talking about things that I was like, I don't know if we should put this on there because this is kind of related to your business, and I just don't know. So we just kept talking, and I said, like, we're gonna pause, and then I told him why. I was like, hey, when we talk about this later, I'm gonna redo this part. When we talk about this later, I want to stay away from this.
Yeah.
And then when we were done going through all that, I was like, okay, before we start, I want you to pause, sit still. And I just edited it today.
Yeah.
I took all of that out, and it looks totally fine. You can't even tell.
Yeah, and I tell anytime I do an interview, I always tell them, I go, we're going to have a conversation before we go live, like you and I did yesterday. And I said, I want it to be natural. So I have a list of questions, but I don't want to get caught up. I want to be able to respond to what you're saying so it feels natural. But I also tell everybody and teach all my clients that when they actually do podcast training for me, I go, you need to have a conversation, find out what they're really passionate about. And then you need to let them know that I'm going to be doing some editing. This whole thing is probably not going to be on YouTube. So if you make a mistake, or I ask you a question twice or ask it a different way, just go for it. Because I may feel like I missed a point, or you were more excited when I asked it again, or they're really flat in their answer and you think it's an important point. So you just ask it again and they kind of look at you. And then, I always tell them, I go, if I ask it to you again a different way, then just answer it, because I'm looking for more emotion. But again, that's when we're doing like talking head videos or interviews or podcasts. But I know everybody wants to see your studio, but the last thing I want you to tell us a little bit about your wife's podcast and who's going to produce that and when's that going to start?
So my wife's podcast it's going to be a Christian podcast, and it's called A Light on Grace. And she actually just recorded her first video Monday morning.
Cool.
And it went really well. I watched it last night. I was like, wow, this is really good, sweetie. Like she did a really good job. And, it was kind of one of those things where it was like, hey, we have all the stuff, because she's been wanting to do something like this for a long time.
Right.
I was like, we have everything. Like, just go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't wait. Yeah. Don't wait anymore. And so she's finally started. It's probably going to take another month or so to kind of get it where she's, you know what I mean? Like probably within the next month, the first video will be out.
Awesome.
And but I don't really like produce it. I just been kind of helping her with it.
Cool.
Kind of like encouraging her. She's going to do all her own editing and things like that. But
awesome.
If there's any switching that needs to be done, I will be doing the switching. Because she's going to, basically it's going to be daily devotionals where she talks for like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
But then maybe like once or twice a month, she'll have like a conversation, like a long form content video where she's having conversations with somebody, and I will be switching on those.
That's cool. That's also going to be good practice for you, because short videos like that are very popular as well. They have their own audience, and for you to actually do the switching for that, you're probably going to go, wow, I should do some short ones. So, okay. I know if we don't get to your studio, I'm going to lose these guys. So let me switch views here real quick. You can see it. You're going to watch it change. Me and Eric's tour.
I'm going to switch my camera view on this to the other. Let me switch camera.
Okay. So everybody can start asking questions right now in the chat. And I will then we'll get a preliminary tour, give us a quick look, and then you guys can ask questions in the chat, and I will be asking these questions to Eric. So can you go portrait?
Okay, so
can you turn portrait to fill the frame? Turn your cam there. There you go.
Like that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so that was the light that I was sitting in front of.
Okay.
I'll start with the cameras. So I have 3 cameras, and I mounted them to a wall. They're all wall cameras, and I have dummy batteries. So anybody that's thinking about doing longer podcasts, a dummy battery is basically you plug it into the wall, and you don't have to keep switching out batteries. So that's one camera. There's another camera over there. Here's a view of the actual set. You can see my key light that is hooked up right up on top of the wall.
Cool.
I have the table. This is the other camera right here. So this would be the guest camera because I sit right here.
Okay.
The guest sits over there. And you can see like little things like that light back there. I was like, well, why didn't I just put a light back there? Because look how cool that looks. You know what I mean? It like creates a little separation. I got some like little floor lights that kind of like show, like they kind of just create, like you can see that it creates like dimension to the wall.
That's awesome.
Because the wall, you know what I mean? The wall is really cool. Now I'm going to show you like what we did. So what we did here was, you can see we have this where this rests up against, and I'm literally going to take one hand and I'm going to turn this around. All this is like foam insulation. So I just flipped it around. It's just foam insulation. So that is my set. And then her set is just on the back side of that. So all we got to do is just flip this around, and it's super light. I did it with one hand.
That's really, really cool how it's just that easy to flip sets.
And then we have these clips right here that basically hold it in place up against that rail.
So
right. So right now this is like just kind of standing here.
Is that like a shower
But I have
curtain?
these. No, it's actually a clip from Harbor Freight. It's a
cool.
ratcheting clamp. And, Harbor Freight's a lot cheaper. I have the PSA boom arms, and then I have the Rode PodMics. One thing that was a big deal for a room like this is it's small, right? So the space on the floor is very important. So cable management was a big deal. So what I did was, you can see that like they have these things that you can like clip onto the underside of
those
like
are
a
great.
table or desk or anything like that. And you can run all your wires underneath because I didn't want all of this stuff. And then I remember you told me about getting that power conditioner, that Furman,
right,
which is basically a power strip that takes out all the noise. So I have most everything hooked up to the Furman that I mounted underneath here.
Awesome.
And then all the cables are in like a centralized place. And then I have this little table that I've literally found on Craigslist that everything is on. So I have my laptop.
Cool.
Is there. I have my Atem Mini Pro ISO.
It's awesome.
I've got my Rodecaster. It's got the dust cover on it right now, but I have my Rodecaster Pro II, and then the SEETEC monitor. And this monitor has all of the camera views on it when it's all hooked up.
Awesome.
And then this little table has wheels on it. And you can see I kind of tried to have everything set up. So these are the cables right here. These go to all the cameras. So I have them all kind of clipped up on there. Like everything is kind of clipped to this little table. That way, when I unhook everything, I literally just wheel this out. And then all of these cables here, I hook them onto these hooks right here. That way, everything is on the floor.
It's awesome.
And I can clean the room. I don't have to worry about anything. It's very like kind of like tidy and everything like that. And then the other thing that I have is that cable right there. That is an HDMI out from the Atem to this monitor here. So that monitor, because this is a separate station.
Okay.
That monitor there is where we can HDMI out any photos that a guest sends, and that we can see that together. And we're talking about it on the podcast, which is what you saw in the clip.
I saw you looking. I saw you looking. It's almost like you're looking at the wide shot camera when you're wide, because that's the center camera right there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So the center camera is right there.
And it's mounted
and
to
so
the
this
wall.
is like, so it'd be basically here.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting right here. And then the guest always sits over here.
Awesome.
And so this is the studio. You know, you can do it in a very small room. This is not a large room. And there are ways to, you know, it took us a while to figure out like how we were going to do this, but I really like this because it's so easy to, I mean, literally, like I just grab it and it's so light. I mean, that thing probably weighs like 2 pounds or something like that, like 3 at most.
And then the back panel, you have to unclip some things or turn the clips around. Is that how it works? Or
So this one, oh yeah, this one, we just would unclip that up there.
right?
And then you can see right there, that's the back side. We just flip it around.
Yeah, it's awesome. So is that a hair light then you have clipped to the top?
Yep, that would be the current hair light system. But what I'm planning on doing is I'm planning on running a rod from here all the way across to there.
Right.
And then I'm going to have these panel lights, because I have two of them, these newer panel lights
Right.
that are going to be kind of shining from like around here that way, because I don't have a lot of space behind. So I'm going to have to kind of come from the side a little bit.
Yeah. So watch my video on the Auto Pole 2 by, it's actually a compression pole that I have my lights hanging on the back of my studio.
Yeah.
So this light over my head right here, if you can see, you
I
can,
do.
yeah, that is on an auto pole, and I can undo that and move it anywhere in the room. You could turn it. I could do it from floor to ceiling. So they're really nice because you can use those Manfrotto super clamps on them, and then you can move your lights up and down the pole. So you're not having to put any screws on the wall. It literally uses compression, and it can handle the light. It can handle those lights, and so
that's awesome.
I'm not getting any. Maybe chat is stopped, but maybe Tony or someone that's watching can do a new chat to make sure that I can see Ernesto. I'm going to put it on the screen here. Chat on the air. Let's see here. Ernesto came in and he said, "Sorry, I'm late. I'm working on homework, but still listening." So, yeah, let me know. Tony, I'm bringing the guest in using Zoom. I'm not using Zoom ISO. I'm literally using Zoom. Occasionally, you can see the signal breaking down right now on Eric's camera. Gary Usser, Uras, thanks for joining us. Hello. Does the auto pole lose tension over time from the weight? Well, I'm not putting a lot of weight on it, and they say the Auto Pole 2 is certified to go up and down, so make sure you read before you order one. I don't put a ton of weight on. We're talking about the LED light panels like NEEWER or Great Video Maker. They're not super heavy, and so I don't worry about those. If you put big lights on those auto poles, just be really careful. But they can support a lot of weight. People use them from floor to ceiling, and there's some industrial ones that you can use. Like people will use them for hanging tools and stuff on. These are designed for like backgrounds and things like that. So just search on my channel, go to my channel, search on Auto Pole 2, and you'll see my video on the auto pole there. Tony says, great job with the studio, Eric. So the wood panels are glued to the styrofoam ? I love the concept.
Yes. So these are just backdrops that you can order on Amazon. They're cloth, so you can see the edge right there.
Okay.
And we basically just glued this down, and then we ran glue here to keep it down. And then on the back side, it is just a completely different cloth backdrop, just glued down. And all we got to do is just flip it around. And the foam sheets that you can use for this are at Home Depot. They're pink foam insulation. I think they came in 8x8 sheets. And then we cut them down to these specific sizes. And we just used some 3M spray adhesive to get it down on the backing.
So did you wrap it? Did you wrap it, or is it like wallpaper, or is it real like are the boards shaped like that on the edges?
So this is actually like a cloth back, and this is the thickness. I think this was 1 inch, because you can get it in different thicknesses. Okay. We got the 1 inch because we wanted to wrap it around a little bit.
Okay.
That way. And the reason that we wanted to wrap it around is because if we didn't have it, then there would be like this weird edge right here.
I get it.
So when you have both of the same backgrounds together, that way you wouldn't see any foam back there. We wanted to wrap it around the edge, so that way when they're butted up against each other, that it would look like, you know what I mean? Like it would look continuous.
Yeah, and plus if you painted the wall or had strips of cloth hanging down between those boards, then it would just look like putty, like the black putty. But they come right up against each other. It looks great. From the camera angles that you're using, I haven't seen any issues with those panels. Tony also asked, what lenses are you using for the close-up shots on your two cameras? Do you know what lens those are?
these are the 12 by 60. These are the standard lenses that come with this.
12 to 60.
And this is the Panasonic Lumix G85.
Right.
And this is just the standard lens that comes with it.
So it's the 16. What does it say there? 16 to what? 16 to 60. So you can go, oh no, 12 to 60. You know what aperture it is? Is it like a 2.8 or anywhere on the side there? I can't read. What does it say for aperture? Is it variable aperture? I can't quite see it. Around the left. What does that say? Oh, I almost can see it. There's glare. It's not focusing. You tap to focus on your phone?
Yeah, trying to get it to focus. For some reason it won't. Hold on.
Because you're so close. There you go. Yeah, it's kind of around the bottom. So we'll look it up. But that's the lens, Tony. We'll have to do some research to figure out what that is exactly. So then,
and then in the editing software, so I have these kind of zoomed out a little bit, because if I have them too far zoomed in, the zoom effect that I use when I do the editing wouldn't look right. So I have them zoomed out a little bit more. That way in the editing software, I can actually zoom in to where I want when I want to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. So the table is just like a table you bought online or locally?
No, so I got a really good deal at Home Depot. So this is actually a 6 by 4 foot butcher block that I got. And then I ordered these legs on Amazon. I think they were called like hairpin legs or something like that.
Yeah, familiar.
And then they're just screwed on underneath. Awesome. So we actually made this. Cool. And then I got these hooks and I just screwed them into the bottom, because this is how I like manage like cables. Like I'll like wrap the cables around there to keep them off the ground like that.
Yeah, I almost bought that. I almost bought that butcher block from the store as well. I was trying to figure out how I could get that in my studio. It was too long for my studio. But that's what I looked at before Shannon and I built our cover for our Costco plastic table. So, okay.
I really like it. And I wanted it a little bit longer and wider, because I didn't want it to seem like we were staring at each other like super close. You know what I mean?
No, that's cool.
And that was another thing. Is I kind of wanted the table to be longer so that it gave the impression that the room was bigger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It looks like that. It looks like a long table that you could actually have 4 people on there. You'd have to change your camera setup, but you could have 4 people there if you did the wide shot, and just have the 2 people closest to the camera sit further back.
This will be something interesting. So like this was something like, so you look in this box right here, right? I just have like a little light. So let me pull this light out.
That's cool.
And then look at the difference without the light.
No, it's night and day. I love that depth.
And this is just a little like newer light that I ended up getting for free because I ordered something else. And just like little things like that can really start to set things off. And these are kind of things that I'm like learning as I go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The class that this new client of mine that was taking, he was talking about, some podcasts look like they're, like a YouTube studio where there's lots of neon lights. What I really liked about your podcast is it really kind of looks like it's not like a YouTube studio. It really looks like a professional, like you're going for a professional set look. So
thanks.
Gary Esser has a question here. Let me put that on the screen. Can you get butcher block from like and other places, different sizes, FYI? Yeah, he's just wondering. You got it from Home Depot, you said?
Yeah, it was on sale. So, but yeah, you can get butcher block from a lot of different stores. It really just comes down to figuring out what size you want, and then just getting that particular size for whatever room you're putting it in.
Right.
The other thing is this was a raw butcher block. So when you get something that's raw like this, you'll have to get like a butcher block conditioner. That's what I did with this.
Right.
So just kind of like a little tip for for like butcher block stuff.
Yeah, and I've had clients. I've had clients add like a fabric and then put glass over it to change the set look.
Yeah.
So it's like a piece of glass.
Good idea.
Yeah, piece of glass. It could even be tempered glass, but it could be frosted glass with like a color under it. So
these are actually fake too. These are fake plants.
Cool.
I think I got these from like Hobby Lobby or something. They were on sale. So real is nice, but these don't need to be watered and they always look good. So just kind of FYI, those are fake plants.
Yeah.
The chairs I got off Amazon. The cameras, all the cameras I bought used because they're, it was like I was trying to stay within a certain amount. And I bought all the lighting used. A guy was selling like all of his lighting. The only lighting
That's
that was
cool.
new are these newer panel lights that I'm using right now. I bought those new, but all of the lights that I have right now are used. I actually have another one of these, but I don't want to. I have another one of these, but I don't want to run it because then I'd have to have the C stand in here, and I feel like I don't really need it right now.
Right. I think if you look into auto poles, you might just decide to, add light to the auto poles. Like right now, you have that pole going along the wall. That's a really cool idea. That's what supports your panels. And then I've seen that. Yeah. I almost bought that particular pole so you can twist it up against the wall. You can go out further. So that light you can actually reposition. So your wife could literally have a different look. So
this will swing this way or that way and come down and extend out or in.
Yeah, those are awesome.
So it's pretty versatile. Yeah.
So can you sit down not where you're at, where your guest normally is, and let us shoot back at kind of your production station? Because I'm always curious. So if you sat in that chair, I know the other one you were using, but if you could sit in that chair and give us, so there's the door. So that's the bedroom door. And is this on the main floor of the house?
Yeah. It's single story. So there's the camera view, like right there.
So your edit desk is right up against the main podcasting desk, and then your switching desk, and then you have the big desk behind it for doing all your editing.
Yeah, and this desk will be right there in that corner with the door open, and Holly will be sitting like right in the doorway.
Okay.
To stay out of the view of the cameras.
Okay, so she edits over there. That's why that table's portable.
And you know what's really funny is if you watch that first podcast, the one with me and Sean,
right?
And see, there's always going to be like little things that you're learning, but in that very first one, the corner of the SEETEC monitor is actually in the first like 10 minutes in the in that shot from that camera.
Oh, so you had to make a little bit of adjustments.
Well, Holly saw that it was in there and then she moved it.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, but it's really hard to. I mean, it's not hard to notice when you know it's there. But if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't even notice it. But yeah, if anybody watches the first like 5 to 10 minutes of it, you're going to see the corner of this in there.
Awesome.
And I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? But it doesn't look that bad.
Well, so any other questions that anybody has? I know there's a little bit of delay from the time I ask it to it can be posted online, but there are your pod mics. Those are by Rode, and they have a little pop filter built into them, a little foam pop filter, and those are the Rode brackets. They just attach to the side of the table. They also have a kit to drill your table that comes with it as well, that boom arm.
Yeah, they do.
That's the boom arm that I have my microphone on right now. It's identical. They have a version 2 of that has cloth on it with a bunch of Rode logos on it, but that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so did you have your graphic designed by someone, or did you design your lower thirds?
So the guy, my actual Career Insights logo, the guy that I bought from, he was a graphic designer for Disney. And I was like, hey, do you make logos? And he like made me a logo. And then you actually did my lower thirds.
Yeah, I took that logo and then built your lower thirds for you. And that's just to get them situated on the bottom left, like I have it on this. So what you guys are looking at right now, this is a foreground graphic. We talked about it last week. I could be in a circle. I could have his camera in a circle. And what I did is it's his camera is coming through a PNG, a clear background. I'm in a clear background out of this cutout, but I also then put his logo into this design so that when he was doing his mobile camera, I could help promote Career Insights podcast. So also tonight, guys, go over and subscribe. I want to double. If you're listening to this video, you've watched it live or you're watching it delayed, go over to the link in the description below and subscribe and like these videos. I think when I looked tonight, before we went live, you had 17 subscribers. Someone said earlier that they subscribed, so that would give you 18. So please go over and subscribe. I've subscribed to Eric's Career Insights channel. Watch some of the videos, comment in the chat. And man, I really think this is cool. So any other questions, before Eric sits back down and we wrap up tonight about his studio. What's that corrugated stuff in the background? Is that like another panel that you bought, like that stuff?
Yeah, this is actually sound diffusing panels that I got from Home Depot as well. I ordered this with the butcher block. This stuff's really cheap and it's super thin. You can actually, let me get up on this chair and you can actually see, we just glued it to that board. That's that foam board. We just glued it to this.
So it comes in small sections and you put it all together?
Yeah, it comes in small sections and it kind of fits together like a puzzle. Like if I show you really close, you can kind of see right there where it goes together.
Yeah. Yeah. Tony's saying, I thought you did the logo because it's very similar. No, actually, Tony, when I got the original files from Eric, I went, wow, you and I were using the light bulb. Of course, his is pure insight. I like the light bulb because it to me, it's like the idea, and you chose it. We talked about that in one of our Zoom meetings, and I said, people are going to think I designed your logo. No, all I did was take his PNG file and fix it so that it could be displayed in the right format. So when you're using an Atem and you just put a logo in there, you have to figure out where you want it. You can use the flying key feature and put the logo on the bottom left. The easiest thing to do is just bring it into your editing software, make a box the size as a full frame, make the box clear with no out borders. So basically in Adobe Illustrator, I just make a widescreen box. So I set up a widescreen new project, and then I take a box around it with my pen, create a square box rectangle. I don't put any fill in it. I don't even make it a color. I make it transparent. And then I take the logo and put it in the bottom left. When I export that PNG now, the logo is where where I have it in this frame. And so Eric just has to put that logo on the screen, and it's a lower third. And I made him some for the logo being on that side and the other side, and I made different versions of those logos. So I do some graphic design for my clients because I want them to be able to practice putting their lower thirds up. So a lot of times if I don't make it for them, we never get to that class of how to get a lower third on there. So Eric, I wanted to, we're going to stay in this view to wrap up tonight. I wanted to basically ask you if there's anything else that you would like to share, and how can they find out your audio podcast? Where are your audio podcasts?
So my audio podcasts will be on like the typical like Spotify, Apple. I haven't gotten to that yet because I need to subscribe to one of those hosting services like Libsyn.
Right.
But that's going to be, I should have that up by the end of the month because we're September 10th.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to have that done by the end of the month.
Cool.
Advice for anybody, it's kind of like one of those things where it's, it's if you're really wanting to do this, you kind of just have to figure out what pace you can work at. You know what I mean? Because it can be overwhelming because you've never done this before.
Right.
I would highly recommend hiring someone. Keith, has been so invaluable. Somebody like Keith is like essential.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of people. I haven't run into other Eric. I think Eric Petrie does some consulting, and people have told me I had one guy that didn't click with him, and that he found me, and so I asked him a little bit of questions about how it did. I really like Eric Petrie, and he does a lot of installs. He's done some really high-end production installs, so he definitely knows his stuff. He probably has more knowledge than I do when it comes to like live events, and I think he did a really high-end studio. It was probably $200,000 install for someone. So did you run across anybody else that does any consulting when you're out doing searching?
I didn't know, like, because you were the one that like your videos were really helpful, and I don't remember how it ended up happening, but I reached out to you, and there was no need to go with anybody else, and I just, if I could go back and do one thing different, it would have been to have someone like you from the very start, because it would have saved me so much time. It's like, yeah, it's cool to like learn everything on your own and things like that, but to have somebody actually say, hey, this, then that, then that, because it takes so long for you to figure out that it's this, then that, than
Right.
that, assuming that you've done all the research correctly.
Right. Plus, if
You
you're
know,
doing an audio video podcast and you're going to do it like
Yeah.
my wife's, we had that experience. We knew that's why we set up this studio. I moved in here to get out of doing it in the dining room. So we wanted to make everything permanent. The other thing too is that some people are doing professional videos, like they're going to sell a product or a training series. That's what I'm doing with a client right now. So she does a lot of Zoom training like I do, but she's also going to do these professional talking head videos, and they have to look differently than a studio. So she's going to have two sets. So knowing where you're going, like Tony, who asked this question, I'll just bring it up here so he doesn't have to wait. Absolutely love the foam board concept. Been looking for a way to have a portable backdrop for my own videos.
So happy with that.
So the sports show, because he has a sports show that he's producing. He's using some really high-tech tools. In fact, Tony has got some really cool things. So if anybody wants to see how it's done, Tony's got some videos. Hopefully, eventually we'll see more of that on his channel. But having these set designs, these are things that I really want us to collaborate. And so he's saying, thanks for sharing. And I think Eric already told me, if you guys have a specific question, you can email me. Those of you like Tony, you have my email. I'll copy that into a group email. And so you can ask Eric any questions. So I tell all my clients that my ultimate goal is for them to become independent as soon as possible. They have access to me. They can buy an hour at a time. That's the minimum, anytime they want. I will then schedule them. They can either do Zoom, or I have a client right now that wants to fly me to his location. So I'm going to be flying to his location. You know him because I did an introduction. Las Vegas and Arizona aren't exactly the same place, but
that's cool.
you're in Tucson. So hopefully I can do the roundabout and go through go through your neck of the woods and see your studio up front. But so Tony said thank you. So we'll get you guys connected if you want to. Joe got in here late. Sorry I missed. This was busy. Yeah, Joe, go back and watch this live stream. I think it's quite fascinating to watch or hear the story, because Eric just now launched his podcast. You can subscribe to his channel. The links are in the description, and you can watch it back. Hank was in broadcasting. Eric, he actually worked with Peter Jennings. He was behind the camera. He's a few years older than you and I. Hank will tell you exactly how old you are, but he is. But he says, are you contemplating ever a green screen? Is his question.
I actually have one, and I'm at some point I will incorporate it, because when I bought all the lighting, the guy had like all this studio stuff, and he's like, "Oh, you want this green screen?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll take it." And I've actually thought about what would be kind of cool, and I've thought about hanging that green screen over this board,
right,
and then having like a live background in a podcast, or maybe showing something during the podcast, like maybe it's photos or something. I don't know, but that's going to be down the road. But yes, I have definitely contemplated that. I have one. I will use it at some point. I'm just not sure how yet.
Yeah. So obviously, I have a video here on lighting green screen on my channel. Doesn't get a lot of views. It's getting more views, but there's so many tools. The Blackmagic Design now has a tool that's for one camera that makes a perfect green screen. So if you decide to do green screen, it's the best tool out there. I forget what the name of that is, but Joe or Tony will probably put that in the chat. Gary says, great info. Thanks, Eric and Keith. So Gary sounds like he's ready to go. So Gary, you can hang with us if you need to head out. Joe says he'll watch the replay. So again, wrapping this up, because I do want to kind of wrap this up, Eric. First of all, thank you so much for being on the channel. I hope that everybody will go subscribe. My goal is to see, my channel support other channels like this. So you are a client. You did hire me. This is not a sponsored video. I asked Eric to be my first guest since Atem was on my channel, because I really liked the journey that he's on. I knew that he could handle being on the camera because of just our conversations. So I knew that wouldn't throw him at all. But also, he had 3 new podcasts out. So he's right in that point where he's launching, on YouTube. He hasn't got on the audio podcast released yet. And I did do a survey here a question. Do you watch video podcasts on YouTube? And I'd love for you guys, if you're in the chat tonight, to answer that. If you haven't been able to chat, it's because you haven't subscribed to the channel. You're welcome to subscribe and then unsubscribe. And next week, we'll be celebrating 3,000 subscribers if no one unsubscribes. So I passed yesterday, but I never really celebrate until I'm over 3,010, because I've had people, why I was celebrating, unsubscribe to take me back under 3,000 before. Love those guys. So ECTV is here from Denver. So thank you for joining us. Give us a name if you would like. It's great to have you from Denver so Eric can see your name. I know who Tech for Fun is. That's Joe. But yeah, let Eric know. The chat's going to replay. I'm sure his wife and him will watch this later. So put your names in the chat so they can get acquainted. They can go over and check out your channels. Please subscribe to their channels. My goal is that every time I have a guest on, we'll build their channel. I'm not trying to drag more subscribers to mine. That will happen just naturally. I want to drive subscribers to some of these new voices. So his wife is going to have a spiritual emphasis podcast coming out pretty soon. If you didn't hear the earlier conversation, Eric has a podcast that's about what again? So everybody can hear it.
It's Career Insights Podcast on YouTube.
Yeah. So everybody he's going to interview, they're going to be talking about careers, how you got there. They're going to, the inside information. So if you want to know from someone that's in the career, how to get the career. And actually your buddy talked about how he got into the JAG Corps. And so that's really interesting, because that's another way that you can go from being a regular attorney in the outside of the military world, and then you could be a military attorney, which is called the JAG. And I think that's in more than just one branch, right? A JAG, or is that
all the branches? Yeah,
they're all called JAGs.
So something that I would tell anybody that's watching or gonna watch is like, you could what if your situation till who knows how long, right? At some point, you just have to go. And so the advice I would say is start messing with your equipment early once you've figured it out. And even you're never going to feel ready. So you're just going to have to decide one day that, look, I'm just going to start recording, and realize that you're going to get better over time, and that first one doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. You can make it the best you can for that time, but it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because it never will be.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just, now that I've started, it's like, wow, like I should have started a long time ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just kind of like everybody's advice on YouTube. They're like, just go make that first video.
Yeah, it's hard to it's hard to get people to make the leap. But I remember when I first rode a bike, I had training wheels, and so I was out in public, and everybody saw my training wheels, and I rode bikes with people that didn't have them, and I couldn't wait to get my training wheels off. But I started riding my bike if I had never started with training wheels. Yeah. So I'm agree. That's such good advice, Eric, and coming from someone that's just taken the leap into the world of podcasting on YouTube, and I'm sure we'll see your shorts very soon. So that's last advice. So the last thing I wanted to say is, where you're living at, does it get hot in the studio?
No, it's we still run the AC. It's not real loud. I was a little worried about that, but we don't get any noise in here, so yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, well, the Rodecaster Pro has effects that you can take out the background noise, so when you're not talking. So that's really cool. So Eric, here's the deal. Thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, this was investment yesterday for us to do the test. And then I sent you some questions, and I've covered most of those. We didn't dive as deep into your wife's podcast, but we did get the chance to hear about it. I'm really looking forward to hers launching. Maybe have both of you guys back on to just talk about what you've learned so far, and how what your journey does to hers. Because there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this, and I don't have a lot of women people on my podcast, but I can't wait to get some wives who their husbands convinced to do podcasting. So
well, I consider myself like the crash test dummy right now, because we're going. But
that is so
if
good.
anybody had any questions, they're welcome to reach out to you or me or whatever. I mean, I'm so glad that I got to do this, because I know how it feels to like go on this journey, and it's very intimidating. It's scary. It's like, oh my gosh, am I really going to do this? And yeah, you totally can do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, just keep taking that step forward, get that first video out, and once you're there, it's like, wow, this is really cool. Like I've had a lot of fun with this.
Cool.
Now that it's actually going, and it's exciting when we do a podcast. Like we just recorded the 7th one just this past weekend. So that's the other thing too, is I'm ahead.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm a month ahead. So, you know, but the thing is like, even though I'm a month ahead, I feel the pressure of now I have to keep recording, because my commitment right now is one long form video a week.
Yeah.
So I have to continually be recording so I don't get, you know, either even or behind.
Yeah, and it builds your channel. It builds your channel over time. And I'll just tell you, be patient with the YouTube algorithm, because I have some videos that I produced, like my Atem Mini Pro has over 52,000 views now. People are finding it. I had a guy put a comment this week. He goes, "I do not understand why YouTube doesn't have yours as #1," which is my favorite compliment, because he goes, "I watched so many." He watched so many videos I can only guess before he got to my Atem Mini Pro. And I watched the whole thing again yesterday because I wanted to watch it to make sure I fixed some of the things I did wrong. But I also want my new video on the Extreme to be as good or even better than that one. And so I'll even be giving a shout out to people that gave me ideas for what I should include in that. So I'll be shouting out in my video, and that goes into production. I'm doing the intro tomorrow, and then I'm shooting segments over the next 2 weeks. And anyway, so, okay. Well, guys, thank you so much. I don't see any more chat or any more questions for Eric. So I'm going to let him get back to whatever he's going to do on a normal Tuesday night. I'm so honored, Eric, that you would invite me. Number one.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I got to be here. It was fun, and anytime.
Awesome to have you in my world, and I'm sure I'm going to be gleaning some knowledge from your journey. And so, okay, if you haven't answered the poll, I'm going to close the poll tonight. Out of all of the people that were in tonight that answered the poll, do you watch podcasts on YouTube? 86% of them, Eric, said yes, and 14% said no. And so if you haven't voted, I'll give you a few more seconds. 14 votes tonight. So if there's anybody else in the chat that wants to give their vote on, do you watch video podcasts on YouTube? Now, YouTube has a new algorithm. So it's called YouTube Studio, I believe now, if you want to put your podcast up there. So they kind of experimented with podcast audio ones, and they coexisting on YouTube. Now they have a separate platform that I had to move Shannon's podcast over. So that's a whole nother thing. So I'm going to leave this poll up for a few more seconds. One last comment here. Thanks, guys. Great show tonight. Good luck, Eric. I'll go over to your channel and sub. That's from Tony. Thank you so much. So go subscribe. It's in the comments, the first video that he did. If you want to see the whole thing, hear more about being a JAG, being an attorney, and all the school, Eric and his buddy get a chance to have a conversation and see Eric's
also,
Yeah, go ahead.
If you watch that video, in the first couple minutes on that camera one view, look at the bottom right corner, you'll see the SEETEC monitor. So even in the first video, there was like a fail in there. So you know what I mean? It's like whatever at this point. It's kind of funny when I look at it. That's
awesome. So, well, hey, again, thank you for being. It's great to have someone to have a conversation with, and not just having a conversation with chat. This is actually going to be one of my favorite podcasts or actually live streams I've done, because it's nice to have someone besides Ratso. And if you don't know, Eric, who Ratso is, you'll have to go data mine my YouTube channel, because a couple guys heckled me. They found out that I was a ventriloquist, and they heckled me into bringing my puppets on. So if you go on my channel and you look for Ratso, you might find a video of me doing some ventriloquism. I apologize ahead of time. I'm rusty, but these guys seem to think I'm pretty good at that. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to Eric, and I'm going to shut down this YouTube or this Zoom. So say goodnight, guys, to Eric.
Everybody.
Thank you very much, brother.